word hood, I think of a person, a place, and perhaps even a thing. I'm Sir Creepsta, and welcome to Muhlenberg County Ghost Stories from the Hood. Tonight's tale of terror is entitled Cindy Lou. Up to now, most of the stories that I've shared with you have involved creatures and beings that were both natural as well as supernatural. They have ranged from several different things, such as a headless man, ghosts, demons, the devil, as well as other two-legged creatures that roam the hood. Tonight's tale of terror dives into a totally different realm. The realm of possession, not of people, but of objects. So sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and be terrified by yet another Muhlenberg County ghost story from the hood. For centuries, there have been stories that have involved many different possessed objects, such as Ouija boards, books, pictures, cars, etc. But the ones that always seemed to creep me out the most was those dealing with dolls. For some reason, dolls make my body quiver more than anything else. I'm unsure if it's the way their eyes tend to always be focused on me and follow me no matter where I go in the room, or perhaps it's their human-like form and features. Nonetheless, they remain at the top of my fright list. Tonight's tale of terror involves a particular doll that was given to my sister as a Christmas present by my grandmother many years ago. At first sight, Cindy Lou, the name given to the doll by my sister, was no different than any of the other dolls that she'd gotten over the years. The one noticeable thing that stuck out about Cindy Lou was her height. She was an extremely tall doll, standing around 2 feet. There were no batteries needed to operate any extra movements of her body parts. Simply put, she was just like your basic stationary doll. Therefore, from the outside looking in, one would be quick to come to the rational conclusion that Cindy Lou was no different than any other common doll. At least that's what we all thought at first. But it wouldn't take long for Cindy Lou to make a liar out of all of us, to let us all know that she wasn't normal nor ordinary by any means. Within the first week of having Cindy Lou in our home, I can recall hearing my mom asking my sister an assortment of odd questions, such as, who is it that she talks to late at night when she thinks everyone is asleep? Or what had brought on the sudden mood change she had when dealing with the rest of the family? And last but not least, why was she so possessive when any of her other cousins would ask to play with Cindy Lou? Not really knowing how to answer my mom, my sister would just tell her that it was all because of Cindy Lou, and that Cindy Lou didn't care for anyone other than her. At first, I recall my mom just brushing it to the side, not really giving my sister's answer a whole lot of serious thought. But it didn't take long for Mom's nonchalant attitude towards my sister regarding Cindy Lou to drastically change. It all started when my mom would go into my sister's room to do a little straightening up while she was away at Granny's. How I would overhear my mom telling my dad how she would place Cindy Lou in a particular part of my sister's bedroom, only to find her in a different spot over the course of the day. But Dad, being Dad, would just tell Mom that she had probably overworked herself and that she was possibly tired and just was imagining things. But time after time, Mom would defend her answer by telling Dad that she wasn't imagining anything, that she knew where she had placed the doll, and that she knew that being tired had nothing to do with it. These strange circumstances of events would go on for months, with Mom periodically finding Cindy Lou in parts of the house where she knew she shouldn't be. But nonetheless, Mom continued to allow my sister to keep this doll. It wasn't until one day when Mom had vacuumed my sister's room and then had to leave the room immediately to answer the phone that she realized that there was something strange going on with Cindy Lou. After talking on the phone, she realized that she had left the vacuum in my sister's room and hadn't put it away yet. When she went inside the room to retrieve it, she tripped and fell to the floor. Not realizing at first what had caused her to fall, she lay dazed on the floor for a few seconds, and then turned around, only to see Cindy Lou lying on the floor beside her, staring her dead in her face. I overheard Mom telling Dad that her reason for falling was because of Cindy Lou, and that she knew for a fact that minutes earlier, Cindy Lou was lying at the head of my sister's bed. This prompted my mama to become adamant about wanting to get rid of the doll and get it out of the house, because something just wasn't right with this doll. My parents would spend the rest of the evening discussing amongst one another how they would go about removing Cindy Lou from the house without breaking my sister's heart. I never knew how they were able to bribe my sister into giving up her doll. All I knew is that they were able to do so. But the trouble with Cindy Lou was just getting started. Not long after Cindy Lou was taken from our house, things seemed to get back to normal. My sister stopped her rebellious attitude towards the family, and everyone seemed to be in a happier place. It wasn't until I made a visit to Granny's that I discovered the whereabouts of Cindy Lou. Thinking all along that Mom had taken Cindy Lou to the Goodwill or the Opportunity Center or something of that nature, I was shocked beyond belief to see her standing in the corner of my granny's living room with that same devilish look upon her face, and her eyes still appearing to follow me wherever I went in the room. Granny was totally opposite of me regarding Cindy Lou. She appeared to be thrilled to death to have her in her home. Granny would often go to the thrift store and purchase dresses of all kinds to clothe Cindy Lou in. She would talk to Cindy Lou in a manner as if she was a person rather than a doll. This type of treatment for a doll would often keep my daughter and nieces from ever wanting to go and visit their granny. Reason being, they were scared to death of Cindy Lou. But Granny would often tease them all along, telling them that Cindy Lou was just a doll and that she couldn't hurt any of them. This did nothing as far as changing the frightened stance of the girls. They had it in their minds that Cindy Lou was wickedly bad, and they were right. One day, while visiting with a friend of mine that lived in the area near my grandparents, I mentioned to my friend that I hadn't seen nor heard of my grandparents in a while, and because of this, I was going to give them a call and check up on them. When I called my granny's house, the phone rang 4 or 5 times before Granny would answer. Upon answering the phone, I greeted her like any other grandchild would, which was with a "Hello, Granny. How are you doing today?" Immediately, there was silence over the phone, and then I heard a voice ask my granny who was on the other end of the phone. My granny replied to the voice saying that it was her grandbaby calling to check up on her. Then the room got quiet all over again, and the voice told her to tell him to come by and see you. Not recognizing the voice, I asked my granny who was she talking to. And without any hesitation, Granny responded to me by telling me that it was Cindy Lou. I almost peed on myself hearing this, and I told my granny that I would be right there to check up on her. By the time that I got there, my granddad was pulling up into the drive. I spoke to him and told him what had just happened, and we both entered into the house. Upon entering the house, Granddaddy and I did a quick sweep of the house, making sure that there was no one else in there with Granny. Then we came back into the living room, and there she was, standing beside the couch next to Granny, with that smirkish, evil smile upon her face. Granddaddy immediately began to tell me how ever since that doll has been in the house, strange things started to happen, such as pots rattling in the kitchen, shadow figures appearing to go into the bathroom and not coming out, and voices calling out his name when he knew that no one was there in the house but him and Granny. I pleaded with Granddaddy to get rid of Cindy Lou, but he calmly looked at me and said, "Son, that will break your granny's heart, and that's something I'd never do." As time went on, my grandparents would grow old and go to their final resting spot. During the process of cleaning out their belongings, my mother took the doll as a keepsake, something to remember her mother by. Only this time, I would overhear Mom telling Dad that she wasn't afraid of Cindy Lou, that she was all prayed up, stating that Cindy Lou couldn't hurt anyone in her house because the Lord would not allow it. I took those words from Mama to heart, and I never really paid Cindy Lou any more attention from that point on. Neither did my sister or anyone else in the family. My daughter and nieces even stopped being afraid to be in the presence of Cindy Lou. It's as if a family had come together through Mom and cast the spirit of that possessing doll out of the house. That all changed one day that my parents moved from the house they were in at the time. After spending a lengthy bit of time packing and moving the furniture from the house, upon gathering the last few things, my brother and I looked to Dad and asked him, where was Cindy Lou? For years, Cindy Lou had been in the same spot at my mama's house, which was in the living room corner. But suddenly, she was gone. As we all looked the house over for Cindy Lou, we one by one started thinking the same thing, which was that Cindy Lou had just up and walked out the door. There was no other explanation for it. And still, to this day, none of the family has ever seen a hide nor hair of Cindy Lou. So, if you by chance happen to have a daughter that by means unknown finds herself in possession of a mystery doll that just showed up in her room out of nowhere, please take immediate action and dispose of it, because it just could be Cindy Lou paying some unfortunate souls a family visit. I'm Sir Creepsta, and until next time, stay terrified.